From the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Friday, January 31st. What happens when the federal money faucet is turned off? Week 2 of the second Trump administration started with an effort to find out. The White House issued an order this week to freeze trillions of dollars, a move that caused confusion and chaos nationwide. The order was rescinded almost as quickly as it appeared, but we'll talk about how it all went down and what it might mean for Oregonians. Then we'll talk about the state's ongoing eviction crisis. Despite hundreds of millions of dollars in state funding, eviction cases continue to rise. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Lauren Dake.
I'm OPB Politics reporter Dirk VanderHart here in Salem.
I'm OPB Politics reporter Bryce Dole.
Dirk, let's start with you. You were in Salem earlier this week as well, as the confusion from the Trump administration's order was just settling in. What was the scene at the state capitol?
Yeah, I think mostly, like you said, Lauren, a lot of confusion. And just to recap how this went down, there was this memo that emerged Monday night from Trump's budget office announcing a pause on federal grants and loans seemingly across the board, while federal agencies looked into whether that money was going to purposes that Trump has targeted with executive orders, things like green energy programs, DEI policies, illegal immigrations, things like that. So on Tuesday, pretty much every state government official around the country, and certainly here, woke up wondering what this means for them. How long would the freeze last? What programs would be impacted? Would it mean, for instance, that Oregonians who rely on federal programs to help pay their rent or for healthcare would be impacted? Would it mean federal money that pays for some state employees would suddenly disappear and the state would be forced to backfill that money? No one knew, I think partly because the language of the order wasn't all that specific. The directive did say pretty clearly that Social Security and Medicare and some other programs giving direct money to folks weren't included, but that just didn't add a lot of clarity. State agencies couldn't tell what it meant. The Department of Administrative Services, which houses the state's central financial officer, chief financial officer, still hasn't actually replied to the many emails we sent. So, like I said, a lot felt like it was up in the air.
Governor Tina Kotek and Attorney General Dan Rayfield did weigh in, however, here in Oregon. What did they say?
Yeah, they held a short press conference not long after noon on Tuesday to discuss this in an attempt to offer some clarity. Kotek said she didn't have a ton of specifics at the moment, but what she did say was that the state had confirmed that a number of the online portals, essentially, that state officials used to get reimbursed by the federal government were not working. That included a system where the Oregon Health Authority uses to recoup money for healthcare services that it pays for under the state's Medicaid system. There were similar systems for Head Start and another used by the state's Department of Early Learning that weren't also able to file for reimbursement. Essentially, agencies that routinely get money from the federal government on a daily basis through these things weren't able to do it. Here's part of what Kotek said.
I think we all know, whether you are government or business, when you have certainty and stability, you can do the best job possible. Right now, there's a lot of chaos and uncertainty from Washington, D.C. My ask of Washington, D.C. is turn on all those systems right now.
And then meanwhile, Rayfield announced something that was probably not all that surprising, which was that Oregon was going to join a lawsuit with almost 24 other attorneys general in an attempt to get this order blocked. Here's how he explained it.
We're looking at this as a violation of the spending clause. Congress has the authority to spend, not the president. The Congress can put sideboards that allow the president to do that, but that's not the case for most of these federal funding streams.
And that suit was filed on Tuesday in Rhode Island court. Actually, another lawsuit, though, that was challenging this order had impact by then. A challenge filed in the federal court in the District of Columbia had led a judge to pause the order for a few days until they could look at it a little closer, I guess. And like you said, Lauren, by the next day, the Trump administration was backing off.
Okay, so there was a lot of uncertainty and chaos, as we've established, when this order was issued. But politics is about messaging, and the president and his administration sent a message to his supporters that he is a change agent. Even if trillions of dollars are ultimately sent out the door, it seems like he sent this message that he is doing what his supporters want. He is digging into government bureaucracy.
Yeah, I mean, and that is definitely what we heard from at least one top Republican in Oregon. Senate Minority Leader Daniel Bonham released a statement to OPB on Tuesday basically cheering this move. He said, this is about making sure taxpayer dollars aren't wasted. He said, actually, this is the kind of thing that Oregon should be doing to figure out if it's spending money wisely. Republicans are often contending that the state's budget has grown very, very bloated with sort of minimal oversight of that. But, Bonham was the only top Republican we heard from Tuesday. Congressman Cliff Bentz, who is the only Oregon Republican in Congress, didn't get back to us. House Minority Leader Christine Drazan didn't get back to us. Meanwhile, though, you're right. What we heard from Democrats was a lot of anger and that word chaos. I think there's a suspicion in a lot of corners that the president and his administration are deliberately injecting uncertainty into the system here for whatever reason. And that was especially true, we should note, for Medicaid. I mentioned Governor Kotek said the state wasn't able to seek reimbursement. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon tweeted that they'd confirmed all 50 states the portal was down. But then we had the Trump administration saying, well, actually, Medicaid isn't impacted by this order. I mean, it just generates a lot of confusion. There's messages that seem to counteract actions. And that's where we were at.
I think for a lot of people, it also highlighted the role federal spending has in programs in all levels of society, in schools, in nonprofits, in city and county and state governments.
Yeah, I mean, federal funding is huge. It is a major factor in Oregon's budget, but also states around the country. I think in Oregon, federal money is almost a third of the current 2-year budget. It's around $38 billion. I was hoping to have a better breakdown at this point of what segment of that money amounts to the kind of grant money that Trump's administration clearly has an interest in. That's not super clear at this point, but you're right. I mean, federal aid touches basically any policy area that anyone cares about, things like housing, healthcare, education, transportation. The federal government, I think, had something like $1.2 trillion in grants in 2022. So this is big, big time money.
It can sometimes feel hard to feel really connected to Washington, D.C. when you're in Oregon. But I'm just curious if you had any major takeaways from watching all of this unfold.
Maybe. I mean, I think this is certainly proof that Trump and his people are still very capable of surprising, coming up with things that strike people as beyond the pale, maybe things they might not have even imagined. And he's very good, as we know, at eliciting these really strong reactions and turning everyone's attention on what's happening. But I think this also shows something we've been hearing a lot since he was reelected, which is that some of the mechanisms that sprang up during his first term are really at the ready. The Democratic attorneys general have been saying really since November, they are ready to deal with this. They've got all the, they know how to talk to one another. They know how to team up and fight what they see as overreach. I mean, we saw pretty clearly on Tuesday that they were ready there. I think Ray Field, Oregon's attorney general, has now sued Trump's administration twice in the span of around 2 weeks. So we see that impact.
All right, Bryce, let's turn to you. You have spent the past couple of weeks looking at a data point that we have talked a lot about in the past as the state has struggled with this ongoing housing crisis. You dug into the latest eviction data. What made you want to do this story?
I was reporting a different story, actually, and was talking to leaders at local nonprofits who started telling me that basically they were helping people through more eviction cases than they had than there had been for a really, really long time. And I wanted to learn more about this and about the state of Oregon's housing crisis and what policymakers are trying to do about it. And obviously, homelessness has become this big, visible problem in many cities, cities as different as Grants Pass and Bend, and obviously in places like Eugene and Portland. But as I started calling around to housing advocates, tenant advocates, policymakers, what I just started to hear over and over again was that we just have so many people right now throughout our state who are on the brink of eviction and are facing these cases because of the rising cost of living and a shortage of housing. So before I give you some data points on this, it's important to note that we can't exactly quantify how many people are actually being evicted from their homes right now because only their case filings rather than like actual terminations and those judgments are recorded. But a lot of people, and also just like a lot of people informally agree to leave their properties before, they end up actually being evicted. But just to give you a sense for how many cases are being filed right now, to take a step back, in 2019, there was about 1,500 cases being filed every month. That number obviously dropped during COVID because of the eviction moratorium. But since then, the number has just skyrocketed. So since 2022, there's been more than 2,100 eviction cases being filed every month. Last year, there was more than 2,300 eviction cases being filed every month. Twice that surpassed 2,600. So yeah, there's been a really serious increase over the past couple of years.
You made the point earlier that eviction cases are different from evictions. Is it safe to assume that because there are more eviction cases, more people are getting evicted?
It strongly suggests that there's that is the case. What I've been hearing from a lot of different advocates who are working with people who are facing eviction right now is that while the law has changed a lot and we've obviously dedicated a huge amount of money towards rental assistance to support people, there are more people basically on the brink of this right now than there have been for a long time, and it strongly suggests that more people are being evicted. Yeah.
So what are tenants and landlords and advocates that you spoke with saying about this?
Well, yeah, basically Oregon's population has increased a lot over the past 2 decades, right? It increased faster than the national average. But at the same time, the state, we just did not build homes at the same pace. And then during COVID, we obviously, everybody saw more people were buying homes, right? And throughout the entire country. And at the same time, home construction had largely stalled because of issues with the economy, the uncertainty that was happening, the supply chain, inflation problems. And since the pandemic, obviously, the cost of rent has risen, but Oregonians' wages just haven't kept up. And just to kind of give you like a sense of the situation right now, there's about 1 in 4 Oregon households today that spend more than half of their total income on rent. And more than 85% of eviction cases now are due to people basically not paying rent. So Democrats obviously have made this a really big priority in the last couple of years, wanting to change the law so that they can improve protections for renters. One of the laws that they passed was House Bill 2001. I'm pretty sure you covered this. And that has required landlords to, give tenants more time for an eviction notice for them to pay their rent. It's given them more time, to pay their late rent. But property management advocates point to this law and they say, it's basically allowed tenants to repeatedly forego paying rent. And this has forced some landlords into a really tough spot where they, are having to raise rents over and over again, file eviction cases over and over again. And some of them are selling properties. And that, in their view, that is making the housing crisis even worse, and that it's kicking the can down the road. But tenant advocates, on the other hand, kind of say this has been a really critical change in the law to help people at a time that they really need it.
I'm betting a lot of our listeners will wonder how it's possible that state lawmakers have funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into this issue and that there's still such a big problem. And I'm guessing that you also asked that question while you were reporting this story. So what did you hear?
Yeah, it's really striking, actually, over the last 2 years, how much money is going towards this issue. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars in individual bills since 2023, and billions of dollars towards Oregon Housing and Community Services in their budget. So a lot of this money, obviously, is meant to address the housing shortage, and the increasing rental costs through providing, again, rental assistance help, funding shelters and helping, ramp up housing production. And Governor Tina Kotek has obviously made confronting the housing crisis, a central part of her whole administration's agenda. And she's kind of tied her political legacy to that. And she has set a goal of building about I think it was 36,000 housing units a year right now. But the administration so far is only averaging about half of that each year. And she's acknowledged being impatient with the state's progress, but now she's urging lawmakers to, continue following her agenda by passing her biennial budget. And again, housing advocates, they say that this funding has been really critical for helping people at a time they really need it. It's helped them build more housing, and that it's starting to slowly make progress, but we're just still so far behind just in regards to the sheer amount of housing that we need. And people are still obviously having a really hard time.
So what is the governor, like you pointed out, she's falling short of this goal that she set when she was first elected. She's halfway through her tenure now. What is she going to do in the next couple of years to address this crisis?
It's interesting. She has repeatedly said over the last couple of weeks that her administration's efforts are making progress. She by financing and providing infrastructure for thousands of affordable housing units and helping people avoid eviction. And she wants lawmakers to continue following her lead by passing that budget. And that budget has about $173 million toward preventing homelessness and eviction specifically. And she's even acknowledged, that's a lot of money, but she says that she could use even more. Republicans have been really critical about how her budget has expanded in recent years, basically saying that the state is using too much money that Oregonians just can't afford. But again, she says that she could use even more money and that the administration could use even more money. So while a lot of people agree that we do need to build more housing and many Oregonians are just dealing with the rising cost of living, I think the big ongoing debate right now is just, what's the better way to deal with this? Should we continue to funnel all this money towards rental assistance for struggling people and change the laws to, give renters more grace so that they can cope with all the challenges that they're facing right now? Or are we making people too dependent on government and making it harder for landlords and property managers at the same time that we're spending a lot of money? And again, lawmakers obviously have been saying that housing is going to be a big issue in the legislature again this year. But exactly what that's going to look like is unclear right now. I'll be interested to see if there's any significant departure from the policies that have been passed over the last 2 years.
Great. Let's leave the conversation here for today. Thank you both for joining me. This week's episode was produced by Andrew Thien. Our audio engineer is Nalene Silva, and our music comes from Audio Network. Do you have an idea for a story or a podcast episode, or just want to get in touch with us? We would love to hear from you. Email us at opbpoliticsnow@opb.org. We'll be back next week with more political news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, you can find all of OPB's reporting at opb.org. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening.